Hey, it's Matt O'Leary, and on this gorgeous spring afternoon, I'll finally be reviewing Haken's new album, Affinity. Affinity is Haken's fourth full-length album and first release since 2014's Restoration EP, which I liked a lot, especially that last super epic 15-minute song, Crystallized. I think one of their best songs yet. As far as genre goes, Haken is progressive metal in its truest form. They blend all those 70s and 80s sounds, bands that dared to experiment like Yes or Procol Harum, with sort of the sound of the more modern acts and those that are trying to progress the genre like Devin Townsend or The Contortionist. A lot of times they actually replicate Dream Theater, more so with the technical aspects and then the emphasis on clean and melodic vocals. And for the most part, I can enjoy all their albums to date, but I think I agree with the general consensus that The Mountain from 2013 is my fave. From the quirks of the Cockroach King to Ross Jennings' mathy vocal arrangements, that one just clicks with me. Now the band is reaching back to the 80s with this fairly obvious cassette tape aesthetic on the cover here, and also these pinball machine synths and cacophonous drum machine tom blasts. You'll get a pretty heavy dose of this with the aptly titled 1985, a song that really brings me back to some of Rush's 80s records like Grace Under Pressure or Signals. Diego Tejeda's keyboards really lay the undercurrent on these heavy 4/4 verses. And after a really memorable chorus, which is one of many on this album, the song kind of veers off into this series of really interesting bridge sections. And it's pure prog euphoria when that anthemic breakdown kicks back into that video game part. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. My only real wish on this song is actually during the middle section when Jennings' voice is sort of doing that dissonant pulsing, and he's harmonizing with himself. That was a little more developed and varied. Much of this album is the 15-minute song The Architect. Haken is really good for one of these monster songs on each album, and they definitely deliver with this one. The Architect has some just impossible riffs, just jumping all up and down the fretboard. It's got some ambient passages, it's got a bass solo, and it's got that sort of hydraulic hissing noise, that auxiliary percussion that's always fit in seamlessly with Haken's music. Something I love about Haken is that they can throw in all these odd genres and sounds into their music because they have the chops to pull it off. And they don't make it sound pretentious, like they add this dubstep sound in this song and then in another song, one of the singles, The Endless Knot, and it just works. My favorite part of this album is actually on the back half of The Architect, when those scream vocals come in. I just didn't see that coming at all, especially with Ross Jennings' really pure tone, always kind of leading the way in Haken. But this is a darker moment in a really climactic build in this song. I think it's a leprous vocalist who's doing a guest appearance. I really like scream vocals when they're used sparingly and sort of as that emotional gut punch that you need just at the right moment. I didn't mean for this review to take you through each song on the album sort of section by section, but I think that's just a testament to the quality here. The uplifting track Earthrise provides a brief rest after what is an unrelenting first 5 tracks. And all the pop corniness of this track is overridden by the punch of the groove on those verses. It's more of a groove than a rock beat. The second of these verses boasts these offbeat hi-hats and funk chords on the guitar and incredibly tight vocal harmonies. It's so good. It's so good. Haken goes to these gent riffs a few times on the album. It's very Animals as Leaders-esque, but I think more so of Tesseract and their recent album Polaris, which I reviewed last year. Especially on the song Red Giant, which is one of the lower dynamic songs on the album with its vocal layering and slow vocal delivery. It's Daniel Tompkins to a T. Every single song on Affinity has individual identity. It can be a little long-winded as a whole, but it's diversified and there's no filler or track displacement whatsoever. Another thing I really admire about this album, and this is a little different from their first two, Aquarius and Visions, is that there's a lot of this instrumental noodling and just, playing around. But it's not noodling just for noodling's sake. It always sounds like it's going somewhere and like it's purposeful and like it's complementary to the song's rise and fall. If you pay close attention to anything on this album, it's gotta be the differences between the choruses on Lapse, which is probably my favorite track. Listen to the chord changes and how the second chorus differs. Instead of landing on the 1, they actually land on the 7, and it just makes this glorious money moment. This review's been a little all over the place, but I think this band can be as well, so it's probably fitting. To summarize, there's very little on this album that I dislike. From the compositional genius to the technical mastery of each instrumentalist to the flow of the entire album, it's all fantastic. It's a relatively unfounded criticism just because I've yet to dive too deep into the lyrics, but as far as the themes go, from what I've gathered, there's a lot about this relationship between artificial intelligence and human intelligence, and whether technology can sort of undermine the need and subsequently the abundance of human creativity in a technologically advanced and dependent society. I feel like that's kind of already out there, maybe not, but it doesn't seem too unique to me. Additionally, I think Haken sometimes fall into the trap of being just a collection of those 70s and 80s prog metal influences instead of a band that's forward-thinking and truly unique. I think there's no doubt that Haken has risen to the top of this genre, but if they want to fulfill the namesake of progressive rock, they have to progress. Well, they don't have to. I think I'm going to keep throwing money at this sound as long as they're creating it, but they're certainly capable. Carry the torch, Haken. Bring us into a sound that we don't yet know or understand. You're probably like, hurry up and get to the score, dude. It's a 9 out of 10. Nearly a perfect album. I'm really, really enjoying this one, and I'm going to be coming back to it for years to come. And the sad thing and crazy thing about this is that some of these guys are full-time school teachers, which is just like, pff, come on, Haken. This one was a little daunting because of just how much detail is in this album. I really encourage you to listen closely to it because I really couldn't do it justice in just talking about it. That's really the thing with music, is that there's only so much you can do to describe and explain how much you enjoy it. So please like this, please comment, tell me what you think about it, subscribe to my channel, all that YouTube stuff that everyone says every time. Thank you for watching. My only real wish on this song is actually during the middle section when Jennings' voice is sort of doing that dissonant pulsing, and he's harmonizing with himself, that was a little more developed and varied.